What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Blazers Uprise post-game show on our second channel, Blazers Uprise Live. I hope everybody's having a good night. I hope everybody enjoyed that fantastic game that we were able to witness tonight. We're going to go in on some of the scheme things that Eric saw, as well as some of the individual players that touched the court tonight for the Portland Trail Blazers. The Blazers were without a number of key guys: Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Robert Covington, Norman Powell. Who else were they without? Not Nasir Little. It was a long list of guys, a long list of meaningful
Macklemore
players.
didn't play.
Macklemore wasn't on the court.
Zeller.
Tony Snell hasn't seen any time. Zeller got to get that nose right. Yeah, so a lot of key players missing tonight, which means you got a starting lineup of Anthony Simons, Keljin the Goat Blevins, CJ Ellaby, Larry Nance Jr., and Yusuf Nurkic. So you got three rotation players in there. The rest were guys that probably aren't going to see the floor. But there is one guy that came off the bench tonight that we have to talk about. But before then, Eric, just what are your thoughts on tonight's game? How are you feeling about this one? Is this just a game that nobody should even care about, or was there something you were able to take away from this one?
I actually came away from this game feeling very confident about the direction of this team. I know I'm not going to read too much into it, but just some of the scheme things I saw on defense, the way we handled pick and rolls, the way our rotations were, and then on offense, just, the ball movement was very, very good. We had a lot of turnovers and stupid passes as well, but we had cutters down the middle of the key. We had a lot of possessions that resulted in open threes, and a lot of guys just missed wide open threes. So not much you can do about that, but I felt like the type of shots we were getting, especially in the first three quarters, were just unbelievably good shots resulting from player and ball movement, and I really like that.
Yeah. My takeaway from this game is it had me laughing during a lot of it, man. So I'm glad that you took away some positive things. I took it for its comedic value. I enjoyed Twitter tonight. I got annoyed with trying to figure out a good way to watch a Root Sports stream legally. My Xfinity stream was super low quality, so still waiting on some sort of resolution for that. I got triggered at Root Sports telling us to contact our providers as if we're supposed to negotiate for them, so I tweeted out about that. So yeah, honestly, tonight it was it seems like you watched the basketball side of things a bit more heavily. I watched the game. It was hard for me from the get-go to really get mentally invested in this game with the guys we had out there on the court. I did like the ball movement as well. It's a night and day difference compared to last year. That's not saying much because we literally didn't move the ball last year. So it's just this game was tough for me because every preseason, you have a game in which teams kind of treat it like a regular season game. And I'm just waiting for that game because tonight it obviously wasn't going to be that game. But you can kind of see the emphasis that's being placed in practice, even though it's guys that aren't going to play. So, yeah.
Well, honestly,
that's just kind of my take.
Blevins played, 23 minutes? So that's half the game. You're basically playing 4 and 5 out there. You're at an NBA game with basically playing with a little kid on your team, and you're at a disadvantage from the beginning. And so no matter how good the rotations were, there was always Blevins on the backside to mess it up and give up a wide open three or fell asleep. I lost track at 11 or 12 times he did that in this game, and then on defense, his guy doesn't even look at him. He has wide open cuts to the basket all game, and he doesn't even move. He just stands there and lets his guy not guard him. And I don't understand how this guy's in the NBA. But I do understand it. I'm just saying, just now that he's in his second year playing, practicing with NBA players, I just can't believe someone can't pick up like a little bit of awareness or like basketball ability just rubbed off on him by practicing with these guys every day.
So does this mean you'll finally admit it?
Admit what?
That I can do more on the basketball court than Keljin Blevins.
I still think he locks you up in 1-on-1, but yeah, I don't know.
No, we're talking 5-on-5 NBA game. Okay, I tweeted out his stats. All right, I gotta read this off for the stream. Chat. Keljin Blevins' 2021 preseason minutes played: 31 minutes 17 seconds. Points 0. Rebounds, he has 1. He has 1 rebound in 31 minutes. So good for him. Yeah, and that was last game. So round of applause for that 1 rebound.
He almost got a rebound tonight, but it got knocked out of his hands out of bounds. So shame.
Tragic, man.
Yeah.
Assists 0, steals 0, blocks 0, field goals 0 for 3, 3-point 0 for 1, turnovers 3, personal fouls 2. He has 1 single positive statistic in 31 minutes of play, and it's a rebound. I think I could at least get 2 rebounds in 31 minutes. I think you could get
19.
Yeah, I think you could get an assist somehow. Oh my goodness. It's impressive actually. The fact that is his stat line through 31 minutes. It's almost like you have to try. I mean, no shade at him. He's obviously not an NBA player, and I don't know. He might even say that to you. He might just know. You know, hopefully he has some self-awareness about it and why he's in the league. But oh my goodness, it's funny. Hopefully we never have to play him in a meaningful game.
Yeah.
Because I'm cool with him being a meme when we're up 20 and subbing him in and then getting hyped as hell if he scores. I'm down with that. But I just it's funny to me because I wish you ever just wish you had the chance just to see how bad you were in an NBA game?
Yeah, I think that's different though than saying you'd be better than someone in the NBA. I mean,
bro, Eric, I could have more than one.
Montana score.
He's okay. I'm not gonna say I'm a better basketball player than him, but I could in 31 minutes of play, I could do more than he's done positively.
Yeah. I mean, it's impossible really not to.
Yeah, so that's all I'm gonna say. You know, I'm not going to say I'm better than him. I mean, but I'm not gonna say I'm not at the same time. So anyway,
LiAngelo Ball, the other person you're better than, according to you, signed with the G League.
Bro, LiAngelo Ball is better than Keljin Blevins. Yeah. Okay, I'll say it here first. Ooh. Breaking news.
Oh wow. That's really bad for Blevins, for those who know Tory.
Okay, LiAngelo showed me a little something as a shooter in Summer League, all right? I'll give him his props before I give Keljin Blevins some props, man, because Keljin Blevins doesn't do anything. Blevins should have played Summer League. That would have been fun. Why was Emmanuel Mudiay playing Summer League? I wish Blevins was our Summer League point guard. That would have been him with Michael Beasley in Summer League. That would have been fun. But yeah, so that's my Keljin Blevins diatribe for tonight.
You said it right. I was just about to say, for those who are trying to correct Tori's pronunciation, he's saying it wrong on purpose.
Man. Yeah. Honestly, okay, for the longest time, I was honestly mixing it up, his name. And now I just run with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so we got him out of the way. Let's just forget about him for the rest of the stream, if you guys want. Shout out Andrew Hartwell, $5 dono. He says, first live chat I've been able to watch. I'm hyped. Appreciate the $5 dono. Andrew, your first time being in a live chat couldn't have come for a better game, my guy. Could not have come for a better game. So I'm glad, the Blazers put on this performance tonight for you to come and enjoy it with us. So
hopefully for your sake, you can watch a few more live coming up.
Yeah, hopefully this isn't the last one, all right? So shout out to your first one. It better not be your last. Oh, my goodness. All right, so Eric, I'll let you lead the way. What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about Dennis Smith Jr. because I want to throw this. You probably saw my tweet, but I want to throw this out at you. What would you think about not only signing Dennis Smith Jr., but signing him to the MLE?
He's not.
Here's
I'll let you say your reasoning. Okay. I am not on board with it.
The reason is twofold, and it could just be for 1 year. It doesn't have to be multiple years. But my reasoning behind it is, one, if he has a good year and becomes a quality backup, or, I mean, this guy still has the potential to pop. I mean, he's still young. He's still a very talented player and has the tools in there to be a good basketball player. If we sign him to a minimum contract, 1 year deal, it's going to be really hard to re-sign him next summer. And a minimum contract also doesn't have a lot of trade value. So that brings me to my second point. Whereas if we sign him for $5 million to a 1 year deal, that gives us a nice $5 million contract to possibly trade for a player at a different position near the trade deadline, especially if he's coming in and providing some solid minutes if someone's injured or whatever.
I mean, the trade flexibility would be nice. As to point number one, I just don't see him getting enough of a chance to even out-earn what we could pay him next offseason. I don't think it's like a Seth Curry situation where Seth Curry was our number one guy, guard off the bench. So he earned a contract, and he'd already kind of proven he was, a higher salary player than what we were giving him. He was just coming off an injury that offseason. So I'm not saying he's not necessarily worth it. Like, he's looking really good, but in order to keep him, I don't think it's going to be an issue just because I don't think he's going to get enough minutes. Hopefully he doesn't. If he's getting enough minutes, then it's a legitimate issue because that means somebody went down or Amfredy has completely fallen out of favor. As far as the trade piece, yeah, it'd be nice, but if the Blazers are in the tax this year, it triggers repeater for next year, correct?
If they're in the tax next year, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think they're definitely not going to cap dump Nurkic or anything like that. Like, some people have thrown that out there, and that's absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous. But I could see the situation.
Sort of. I mean, if the rails fall off and we're just terrible this season, which isn't going to happen, but I mean, and it's obvious Dame's going to ask out or something. We would trade Dame
at that point. So that's not going to happen as long as we're just decently competitive, right? I think we're close enough to the tax that there is a possibility of a CJ trade that makes sense just for basketball reasons that could also get us below the tax line where we wouldn't have to deal with repeater tax next year. You know what I'm saying? And if you sign Dennis Smith Jr. to $5 million, then all of a sudden a potential basketball trade that also just has the financial benefit of getting us out of the tax no longer would get us out of the tax. So it basically just becomes a $5 million, or maybe it's $3 million, $4 million, whatever, an up to $5 million trade piece at the deadline, which can be used for matching salary, which could provide us with more trade flexibility at the expense of any chance of us getting out of the tax with a trade that makes sense for basketball reasons.
Here's what I'd say to that, though. Let's say you're right and we do trade CJ. If we traded him, let's just say Siakam, just like a forward or whatever. I'm not saying that's going to happen or whatever, but let's just say we happen to trade him for Siakam, right? Wouldn't having Dennis Smith Jr. Possibly locked up for multiple years, or the chance to lock him up for multiple years after this one, if he's showing in practice that he's making CJ expendable and can run the second unit, wouldn't that be more important, I guess, if we're doing well, than worrying about the tax situation if Jody's willing to pay it?
I still don't think we would play Dennis Smith Jr. because I think you move all of Norm's minutes from the 3 to the 2, and then Anthony would hopefully be getting all backup guard minutes for about, 25, 26, 27 minutes per game. If Dennis Smith Jr. on a minimum contract, maybe you'd play him spot minutes, but that's the thing. If you're only playing him spot minutes, he's not going to be worth $5 million on the market next year for pretty much any team. So it's not a situation where you're worried about losing him, right? So that's the thing. It's just... I
actually really like Dennis Smith Jr. and Ant playing together. And I feel like, I mean, it's only been a couple games, But what Dennis Smith Jr. has shown in these two games is exactly the type of player we've needed off our bench for a really long time. Not just a shooter, not just um, a rotation player, but someone who can come in, run the offense, get into the paint, create shots for others, and get to the rim and score himself, get to the free throw line. I just think there could be a situation where this guy has finally realized that he's not a star yet, or might not ever be a star, and settles down and just plays his role and just becomes really good in that role. And then we're going to be kicking ourselves because we only signed him to a minimum contract, and he's worth, the mid-level exception. And so we have to choose to whether to use that on him and keep another guard, or get rid of him next year.
But why are we worried about the fourth guard? And if we potentially lose the fourth guard, especially when we have a small forward who, if we traded CJ, would become a guard. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, it's either Dame and CJ, Dame and Norm.
It's not like you couldn't play him at the 3 anymore.
But it's like, at that point, if you're giving Ant 25 to 28 minutes per game, even if you play Norm some at the 3, you're not going to have that many minutes. And it's not like you're going to be kicking yourself for losing him because you want him to play 10 to 12 minutes a game. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't see us losing much there. And that's the thing. If he looks really good, and yeah, we could pay him, but if another team is willing to pay him a similar amount but give him a bigger role than we could give him, then he's probably going to go there. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's the thing, is long term, I don't...
But if he's in that position, though, then he'd actually have some trade value, and we, with a decent-sized contract, might actually be able to get, say, a couple seconds or a first.
You're talking about the deadline?
Yeah, or in the future, if we re-signed him in the future, whatever.
Yeah, I just think it's 2 preseason games, right? Like, this is kind of a point that I want to make on this post-game show, is I don't want us to get too far ahead in terms of our expectations of him. I mean, you look at Harry Giles 2 games last year, and obviously he wasn't in the right system for him, so I do think this is a better situation for Smith than it was last year for Giles. But
can I say something about that real quick?
Go ahead.
So to that point, I said this when we signed Dennis Smith Jr. I felt like if Billups takes him under his wing, there's a lot of similarities there. Billups bounced around to several teams early in his career, struggled with his shot, struggled running offenses, struggled on defense. And I think Billups might see a lot of himself in him and take it upon himself to develop him. And I'd like to be the team that benefits from that if he does develop someday. But to your next point,
I mean, that, and I was going to ask you this, like, do you really see him getting enough minutes where a team's going to trade a first-round pick or a couple seconds at the deadline this year when it seems like nobody really wanted him this offseason?
Well, here's the deal. We've ran Dame and CJ into the ground in previous years, right? Because they've had to play heavy minutes, and we can't ever rest them because if they go out of the game, we suck, right? So if we have a situation where we have 4 guards and can actually rest players, or even give Dame a game off every once in a while and still be fine because we have a capable replacement on the bench, or get Dame and CJ's minutes to around 32 where we're not costing ourselves wins during the regular season, I could see a situation where, or of course, there's always going to be some time in the season where we're going to have to deal with injuries. So there'll be times to play throughout the season where someone misses games. So
I mean, but here's the thing. Like, if you want to play Dame and CJ less minutes, you can play Norm more at 2. You know what I mean?
I understand
and more at point guard. And that would give a guy like Nas more minutes. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying, I want him on the team. I don't think he's going to be worth more than the minimum next year because I don't think he's going to get enough of a chance. B, I don't think that we're actually going to get value in him at the deadline outside of his salary being a matching piece. And basically, the discussion is, should we pay him more than the minimum? right? Because people were saying Torrey is wrong and bad. I don't get that. What am I bad at? But the conversation is, should we pay him more than minimum? Not should we have him on the team.
Yeah.
All right.
So absolutely be. I think it's crystal clear he needs to be signed at least the 14th spot. Yeah. I don't know if we're going to use our 15th spot, but he's definitely won that battle and deserves the spot.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I'm not saying not to. He definitely needs to be on the team. Mm-hmm. What he's shown in 2 games is, I mean, you look at how Quinn Cook looked today and Patrick Patterson and Dennis Smith Jr., I think at this point is basically you can just write him in on the roster. Like, he's on the team, and if he's not, I'm going to be upset about it, right? And I wasn't as high on the signing at first as you were, but like at this point, the dude looks great, right? So the conversation isn't about whether or not he should be on the team. It's just, should we pay him more than the minimum when we can have him on the minimum?
Yeah.
So, and that just comes down to, well, is him, like, the only way, I don't know. I don't think it's meaningful, because I don't think he is going to have enough of an opportunity to make a ton of money next offseason. And then if he does play well enough to make a ton of money, then he's going to end up leaving anyway, because we wouldn't have a big enough role for him long term. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of a situation where, like, I'm not worried about us not being able to pay him $6-7 million a year next season.
So what about this, though? We've talked about how, I mean, I probably can't put Dame in this category, but almost everyone else, right, should have to earn their minutes. And like, if you're a player like Dennis Smith Jr., who is just killing it in practice and earning minutes, we wanted a coach that would actually reward players for doing that, right? So I don't know. It's almost like a good problem to have, because if he's forcing a situation where he's deserving of playing time, I think that's when you can really use accountability to your advantage, because you can say, hey, look, if you're not going to, like I said, probably not Dame, but like with CJ or Norm or whatever, you could say, you better pick your effort up on defense in this situation, or I got someone rearing to go here that's capable of playing, and use that as motivation. I don't know.
I don't see, like, if that's the case, though, I think we have bigger issues than not being able to resign Dennis Smith Jr. Yeah. If we have to use Dennis Smith Jr. to be able to incentivize those guys to do what they need to do, then I think we have a bigger issue than not being able to bring him back next year.
But what I'm saying is, I think in years past, it's been like, oh yeah, who are you going to bench me for? Keljin Blevins, you know? Like we can, who are we going to put in? CJ Ellaby last year, you know what I mean? Like, it's been a situation where there's not really a good alternative. So
we have multiple good alternatives this year, though.
Right.
Like, more so than last year. You know, it could be like, if CJ's not picking it up, it could be we're going to cut your minutes, and that could mean playing Norm more at the 2 and playing Nas more minutes at the 3. Or it could be playing Nance and Rocco more together at the 3-4 and playing Norm at the 2 in that situation more than CJ, right? So that's the thing, is like, we have enough positionally versatile players that we can give minutes to in case one of our starters just doesn't have it any given night or needs a little bit more rest or whatnot. Like, I would like to have Dennis Smith Jr. as an option off the bench. I don't know. The reward, I mean, there's really no risk paying him more. I'm just thinking of it from like an ownership's perspective. I don't think, and I can't really blame them for this, I just don't think they would see the reward for signing him to $4 or $5 million or whatever for this season when we can have him on a minimum. And like, it makes it easier to keep him if he earns more. I just don't think that's realistically going to happen, and if it does, then we have other issues that are more important. That means one of our guards is injured or whatnot, or Anthony's struggling a ton. I mean, so it's just, I don't know. It's the reward is not enough for me to do that.
I mean, I did bring this up last stream. If Norm, I don't think his value is going to decrease at all, so there could be some sort of move there too. He's got a really good contract locked up for 5 years. That could be a huge trade piece down the road as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't be mad at all. It's just I laid it out. It's
I just watched this guy, like he comes in and it was like 6 or 7 straight possessions where he just made the perfect pass, like he made the right decision, was just really like solid out there, and it just got me thinking. Like I feel like at some point we might regret if we just signed him to a minimum.
Yeah, who's he going against though? How much was he playing against Davion Mitchell today?
Mitchell played. It was weird because his minutes. He came in and then he left the game pretty early, and then he came back. I don't know how many minutes he actually played, but there were some minutes against Mitchell.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like every year there's somebody, and this is on multiple teams, somebody that looks really good over a couple preseason games, and then people get a bit ahead of themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, he obviously has talent. That's why he was a top high school recruit, 8th overall pick. He obviously didn't figure it out in the NBA, but he obviously has some talent, athletic ability, feel for the game, whatnot. It's just, I don't know. Like, normally, he's not going 7 for 8. You know what I'm saying? He's a career 44% shooter from 2 and 31.6% shooter from 3. Like, he's never even been close to being efficient.
Yeah.
His highest true shooting percentage any season of his career is 50%. His true shooting percentage for his career is 47.6%. Now, Chauncey's a great coach for him, and this could be the break he needs. But it's like seeing him do that for 4 years, and he got opportunities.
Yeah.
Right? He got opportunities, so it's like I just don't want people to get too ahead of themselves based off 2 preseason games.
Yeah, so what I'll say to that is, one, I'm trying not to get like hyped off 1 or 2 preseason games, but everything that Chauncey has been like talking about wanting to do, get into the paint, pass to the open shooters, get better shots getting into the paint to get good looks, getting to the rim, that kind of stuff. Like he's done everything. And then on the other end, he's playing good defense as well. Like I just feel like he's doing everything. He's the embodiment of everything Chauncey wants on both ends of the court. So I could definitely see him earning some minutes just based on that.
Yeah, I mean, Chauncey's the perfect coach for him. It's just, if he's getting into the paint and not finishing, which I don't know, I'm looking for like his 0 to 3 foot percentage. I mean, he's just never been efficient. So that's the thing. Like all these, like right now, when he's making every shot, he looks insane. It's like, oh, this is a perfect situation for him. He looks phenomenal. If he starts missing all these shots, it's not the same narrative. You know what I'm saying? And I just don't want. I feel like it's unfair to him if expectations get too high in terms of him as a scorer, because that's not necessarily like.
Honestly, the scoring is not what I'm even thinking about right now. I just like the way he runs the offense and plays defense.
Yeah, I'm just prefacing that, you know. So, I mean, I like it too, and I think this is a good system fit for him, and he should definitely be on the team. And that's the thing is, like, I would probably rather play him next to Ant than a Ben McLemore at this point, just because I like what he brings defensively and running the offense and his slashing ability. All the things that you are. I don't know. Every preseason, I always feel like there's a guy that's like that. Throw it back to Nick Stauskas. You know what I mean? Throw it back to Mario Hezonja in the preseason looked good, and everybody was saying how good Mario Hezonja looked. So
that wasn't me though.
I know. I'm just.
I mean, you did that with Giles last year.
Yeah, and I did that with Giles, and then I don't know, it wasn't a good situation for him, so that was kind of the difference there. But that's the thing is. I don't know. Maybe it's because Stotts never utilizes them right. I just don't want to get too head over heels over a training camp invite.
I kind of mentioned this earlier, but so he goes to Dallas, right? This was the pre-Luka days. I think he played half a season with Luka before the Porzingis trade or whatever. Maybe it was like 3/4 of a season or whatever. But up until Luka came, I mean, he was pretty much expected to be like the man of the team, right? And he had a good, or I wouldn't say good, but he was showing some promise his rookie year. Kind of fell off his second year. Then he goes to the Knicks, and the Knicks are terrible. And he's the same way. Like, they're like, oh, we have this young guy, but he's not doing anything. And then he goes to the Pistons, and the Pistons were terrible last year. I just don't think he's been in a situation where he doesn't have to try and take over games, which may not be his strength. It might just be he's just so much more comfortable in a role where he is playing around good players and just does his role. And you can be an elite player as a role player like Robert Covington or whatever if you just come in and do your job. So I like that kind of thing. But at the same time, he still has that upside of potentially being more than a role player too, which I like as well.
I mean, my head doesn't disagree with you at all. Like, those are all very solid points. I'm too jaded from wait till we get Nick Stauskas in here. He's only played for terrible teams. He's gonna be great once he gets in Portland's system. And then he sucked. And then we get Mario Hezonja the next year, and everybody's
those are
like
role players, right? Those are guys who I know. Couldn't shoot wide open shots or whatever. Whereas Dennis Smith Jr. was actually game planned as like the best player on a team most of the time.
No, I know. No, you're making valid points. I'm not even disagreeing with your points. I'm just saying it's like I'm jaded from the Nick Stauskas Mario Hezonja experience because everybody was talking about, oh, wait till they get in Portland. They've only played for terrible organizations. So the thing is they're different players, and it's, this is a more valid argument than the arguments people made for Nick Stauskas and Mario Hezonja. But just emotionally, it's like
you're scarred.
This is what I've heard. I feel like I've heard this before. You know what I'm saying? So,
and to the person who says I sound like I'm higher than on Dennis Smith Jr. than Ant, I'm higher on Ant than I am on Dennis Smith Jr. still. So I like him even more. We'll talk about him later.
Here's something to bring everybody back down to earth. Guess who has the higher career 3-point percentage, Mario Hezonja or Dennis Smith Jr.?
Mario Hezonja, based on what I'm saying.
Yes. Yes. Mario Hezonja career 3-point percentage 31.9, Dennis Smith Jr. 31.6. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the thing. Offensively, it's a lot harder to slash if you don't keep defenses honest and guarding you at the 3-point line. And his shot looks smooth and looks great, right? So, I mean, hopefully for his case, like if he can be turned into a 36-37% 3-point shooter, he has a role in the NBA because he can defend, he's athletic, he can slash, he can make the right pass. He just has to be able to shoot the ball. So, I mean, it's just something where I need to see it over a longer span. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing is Mario, Mario could never shoot the ball. And then he'd try and drive against the defender sagging on him. And it's like, what do you do? Mario would have been better in Chauncey's system because he wouldn't have had to create all the time against a set defense. He still would have been bad, but he wouldn't have been as bad. So Dennis Smith Jr. under Chauncey is going to be a better player than Dennis Smith Jr. under Terry Stotts because it's like even though he's playing with better players and can kind of just play a role, Terry Stotts' system was guards, you're just going to create something out of nothing all the time.
Well, that's basically the rest of Dennis Smith Jr.'s career would be like him just coming into the game having to do that. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. Me and you can discuss anybody for hours because we'll get in deep to the nerdy stuff like that, man. I understand why you'd want to pay him more than the minimum, and I understand it makes it easier to resign him and it's a possible trade chip at the deadline. I wouldn't even necessarily be against it. I just wouldn't be for it either. It's just like, doesn't really matter to me. So if ownership is like, screw it, we're not going to get under tax this year, pay him $5 million. Okay, cool, good, right? But if I also can't fault them if they're like, well, we're not going to do anything to get below the tax that makes the team worse, but since we're close enough to the tax line, we want to keep the option open if a basketball move makes sense to get us below the luxury tax, and therefore we're not going to pay Dennis Smith Jr. more. That's just kind of where I lie on that.
I think we get these donos.
Shout out Alvaro Bazan with a $2 dono. I got them right here. He says, Billups' effect on Dennis Smith Jr., the perfect mentor for him. I agree. Point guard who struggled early on in his career. There's some similarities there. And Dennis Smith Jr. and Chauncey Billups are different players. Chauncey Billups did not have Dennis Smith Jr.'s athleticism. So that's the thing. Chauncey Billups was always kind of a crafty guy that knew how to get to his spots. So I think that's good for a guy like Dennis Smith Jr., who he had trouble getting into the league because he always relied on just being more athletic than everybody at the point guard spot. So Billups has been credited with improving playmaking of various Clippers players last year when he was an assistant there. So hopefully that has a positive effect on Dennis Smith Jr. as well. And I think that's why Dennis Smith Jr. came here, to get mentored by Chauncey. So I agree with you, Alvaro. Billups is the perfect mentor for him.
Yep.
And then shout out Caleb Pendergraph, $2 dono. Says, it's too late, Tori. I'm already on Dennis Smith Jr. Island. I'm in the plane circling above. Like, I don't have the parachute on my back yet. Okay, I'm scoping things out from above. Okay, you can be on the island. I'm completely cool with that. Appreciate it, Caleb Pendergraph, $2 dono, and then Alvaro, another dono. This time a $5 dono. He says, wouldn't you rather stay with the Billups that has shown results instead of bounce around more? He looks like our best on-ball defender. Casually optimistic. And does he stay with Chauncey for a very limited role compared to maybe being the first guard off the bench somewhere else? I feel like he would take what he's learned from Chauncey and then try and apply it in a bigger role next year.
I agree with that, yeah.
So I think that's, and I would in that situation, So that's the thing is there's a chance Chauncey helps him look at the game a little bit differently and realize how to find his niche in the league. And then once he figures that out, next year he wants the chance to go fill that niche, and that might not be here. So it would be a cool story, though.
That's also the upside of having a coach like Billups is then the next Dennis Smith Jr. that comes along will see, hey, look what this guy did for Dennis Smith Jr.'s career, and maybe want that same treatment, and maybe we'll get a free agent that we wouldn't have had a chance of getting 2 years down the road. Because of the way we developed him after it looked like his career was fading fast.
Yep. So let's move on. We've been talking Dennis Smith Jr. for a while now. What other, what other takeaways you have from this game?
So I really liked some of the things they were doing on defense. Their pick and roll defense, there was a couple plays in particular where they were doing this thing I really liked from Miami during their bubble run, where like Jimmy Butler was on ball and he would get screened and he would just take like 2 steps back and stand there to where he was still close enough to contest a 3 if the guy shot it, but but he was also in position if he drove or whatever, so he couldn't really get to the basket. And the big man then like loops around and kind of hedges, but then loops around back to his guy. And if you do it fast enough, I feel like it's a great way to just blow up the screen completely and make it useless. And I was so excited to actually see it being tried, at least in this game. And just little stuff like that really impressed me tonight. Showed that they were really working on some of that kind of stuff over the last week. And so the next step of that is our initial rotations. I felt like were really good tonight outside of a couple players, one we've already mentioned at the beginning. But other than that, our rotations were really good initially. It was just like the second and third rotation. So like if you have to close out on an open shooter, and then he passes it to another guy. It's the next guy who's messing up or whatever. And I feel like that's a step in the right direction because we didn't even have the first part of that down in the last couple of years. So I feel like once we get the first step down, then we can focus on what's happening after that. But just stopping whatever team's initial plan is on offense and having to have them go to their secondary options is a step in the right direction. I feel like that's going to automatically improve our defense. Not a ton, but enough to make a difference to where we're not one of the worst defensive teams in the league. And then if you can, throughout the season, lock in that backside rotation, which is something we didn't have when we went to a different defense, like in a playoff series against the Golden State Warriors, and our rotations our second and third rotations are too slow, and we get burnt off a Draymond Green lob to Kevon Looney or a kick out three to Klay Thompson or something when we shut down Steph Curry. Like those kind of things, if you practice them throughout the year, I feel like by playoff time we'll be more able to switch up our defense and go to different game plans and make adjustments at halftime and throughout a series. And so far I've been very impressed with the amount of different things we've been trying and how good it looks, at least initially, on defense.
Yeah, and this is the second preseason game in a row in which we have pretty much shut down a high-caliber point guard. Steph Curry, the first half of that first preseason game, I think we did a great job on him. We got a little bit hot in the third quarter, but you're not going to shut down Steph Curry for an entire game. Tonight, De'Aaron Fox in 22 minutes is 2 for 10 from the field. 8 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds. So it's going to be interesting once the games start counting because that's the thing. These are guys that have been here and are the best players on their teams. So it could just be a case of the preseason. So, I'm going to wait and see, but I'm highly encouraged in terms of our ability to make it tougher on lead ball handlers like a Luka Doncic, who always killed drop scheme and we'd consistently run it on him. Now it's like, and that's the thing, Luka Doncic has a very high basketball IQ, sees the floor very well. You can't just give him the same look all game. So that's the type of guy you got to switch things up on, and you can't just give him a ton of space by running drop scheme against him. So it's going to be encouraging. I'm looking forward to playing the Mavericks and just seeing how Luka looks against our defense when we're doing the stuff that we should have always been doing against him. And other guys in the league, other lead ball handlers, when games are actually mattering, and once we've had more time to kind of dial in the secondary and the third rotation behind the initial defense, it'll be interesting to watch, man, and I'm excited for that. We got 2 preseason games left. I'm just ready for it to start counting. And this is the team we play opening night. It'll be interesting to see how De'Aaron Fox does against us because so far it looks like if the Blazers are going to have trouble, it's going to be role players getting too easy of looks from the three-point line or maybe cutting to the rim because our second and third rotations aren't there. It doesn't look like it's going to be a situation where one star player is just going to absolutely crush us and go off for 50. You know what I'm saying? And we've had issues with that, with 1 or 2 key guys absolutely crushing us in previous seasons. So it'll be interesting to see opening night how De'Aaron Fox does against our defense.
And that's part of being a scrappy team, is not, or like taking some pride in not letting a guy go off on you like that. But we also did some things with Nurkic where we played him, he would show on the screens and recover back, and it didn't really hurt us that much. They weren't able to get that pass because we had a guy kind of tagging, most of the time it was Rashawn Holmes, who was rolling down the middle of the key, and we had a guy there, but he was also in a position to get back in his man too. It was always the right guy, which is another good sign to see that it was the right person helping off their guy. I felt like we did a good job of showing on those picks and recovering with our bigs tonight. And Nance is he's going to be a difference maker with his help D. There were several times tonight where he just showed up out of nowhere and just stopped a guard from driving to the hoop or something like that. And once we get the other guys to recognize when he does that, you have to recover and guard his man or rotate over and stuff like that. Once they get used to playing with each other and break down film, and that's part of putting an address on it to know exactly what you're supposed to do in those situations. I'm just really excited from what I've seen so far and how that'll look progressing through the season.
Yep. Shout out play-by-play $5 dono. He says, didn't get to watch the game, was busy being tortured watching my Giants play the Dodgers, but out of our training camp guys, who should we bring in? We've been talking about Dennis Smith Jr. also.
It's 100% Dennis Smith.
Yeah, it's obvious. And he said in chat, I just got here clearly. Yeah, that is the answer at this point.
Well, when we break down the players, we'll get to the rest. I do still kind of want Chris to... I hope we sign 2 players, but...
Yeah, on a 15th spot, I'd take Chris just for big man depth. Honestly, I don't want to talk about Quinn Cook or Patrick Patterson. They just shouldn't be on the roster. Patrick Patterson looked terrible.
Yeah, he was...
Maybe we can just get that out of the way now.
He was rough, yeah. He was, I think, 1 for 6 on threes. Missed his first 5. Which, I mean, he's not going to do that all the time, but he caught the ball and just tried to, like, swing it really quick, but there wasn't a guy home. And so he threw it out of bounds a few times.
Yeah.
It just didn't really... I mean, you know what you're going to get out of him. I just don't see the upside of signing him. I feel like we have enough shooting on this team to where we don't need another guy who can only really shoot and not do much else. So I'd rather not have him. And then Cook came in the game, had a really bad turnover, and then blew a coverage on defense in the first possession on each side of the court he had, and I was just like, man, I'm through with this guy already. But
Quinn Cook's a guy who can shoot, and that's about it. That's the problem. Is everywhere else he struggles.
Right, he settled down and he played okay in the second half, but I mean, he struggled shooting wise. But once again, you wouldn't expect that normally. But I just think it's clear Dennis Smith Jr. provides something that he can't, and I applaud those guys for being solid vets, and I'm sure they'll catch on somewhere else. But I just don't think it'll be with us.
Yep. Do you just want to go into the players at this point? You want to go into more guys?
Yeah, sure.
So this Anthony Simons stat line catches my eye. He was 8 for 20 from the field tonight, 1 for 9 from 3, and nobody should worry about Anthony Simons shooting 1 for 9 from 3. He's proven himself as an elite shooter, and a lot of those threes barely missed. It was back rim, in and out type of stuff. So nobody should be worrying about that. I just think it's interesting because last season he shot a higher 3-point percentage than 2-point percentage, and then in this game he is 7 for 11 from 2 while being 1 for 9 from 3. So kind of reverses that trend. Had a lot of good cuts. It wasn't a situation where he was just having to break down the defense. It was a lot of off-ball stuff. Him with a 2-man game with Nurkic, we saw that, and I thought it looked good. I think Cody Zeller is a good enough passer once we get him back that Anthony Simons will be able to do that with Cody Zeller as well. What'd you think of Simons tonight, and especially his ability to shoot 7 for 11 from 2, considering he shot, I think, under 40% from 2 last year?
Oh, did he even shoot 11 2-point shots all of last season?
Yeah, probably not.
I'm being sarcastic, but it felt like he didn't,
Yeah.
So I absolutely love this Anthony Simons, and I'm 1 for 9, who cares? He's not going to shoot 1 for 9 most games, so I'm not at all worried about that. I feel like he had some good threes, maybe 1 or 2 forced ones, but overall, funny, I don't think we forced hardly any shots tonight, which was really nice to see. But man, when him and Dennis Smith Jr. were in the game, and almost every play, one of those two was cutting to the basket and getting a layup out of it, or there was a couple times he took it right at Davion Mitchell a couple times in the first quarter, and I was really impressed by that as well. I can just see his confidence growing, and this guy is primed for a breakout, and I just think he has all the tools to. I mean, we're seeing people thought he couldn't be a ball handler or whatever, but we're seeing that he's more than capable of it. And I like what they said. Billups had mentioned this. I think it was off camera, but that in his offense, it really doesn't matter as long as you have two players that can handle the ball. He's not going to designate one as like the point guard and the other one as the shooting guard or whatever. So I don't think it matters. I just think Simons is a player, and this guy is going to have a huge year.
He got to the line 7 times tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Made all 7 of those free throws. 1 assist, 4 turnovers. I'm not going to blame him when he's sharing the court with Keljin Blevins and CJ Ellaby. All right, I'm not gonna blame him when he's sharing the court with those 2 guys and then playing with Patrick Patterson, Trent Watford. You know what I mean? It's
but that's why that's what impresses me so much about Dennis Smith Jr. though, is because he's like making stuff happen, and I think that'll eventually rub off on Simons too if he sees how Dennis Smith Jr. gets to the baseline or the middle of the key and has those nice dump off passes to the big. I think Ant will start learning that he could do that too, and
I mean, Simons just isn't as strong or as quick as the Dennis Smith Jr., so I feel like his playmaking isn't necessarily going to be the same as Dennis Smith Jr.'s. I think Simons' playmaking will come from him, playing a little bit more off ball, catching passes, whether he's at the 3-point line, maybe curling off a screen, or cutting towards the rim, and then making plays off of that. The thing is, he has very little experience of that because that wasn't really something he was able to do under Terry Stotts the last 3 years. So it's not something that I expect him to be succeeding in right away. But as the season goes along, I would expect Simons to be a little bit more of a playmaker in terms of a guy that is moving off the ball, catching the ball, and then either attacking right away or attacking, kicking, or making the right quick pass once he catches the ball. That's a little bit different than Dennis Smith Jr., but Simons is quick enough to be able to get by guys, and I feel like he's looking a little bit more shifty with the ball, and I feel like his ball handling is looking sharper this year, so some of those passes that Dennis Smith Jr. was able to make, hopefully Simons is able to take something from that.
Yeah, and I feel like on his drives or his cuts, he's getting his hands going towards the basket a little more instead of we saw him a lot struggle the last 2 years with it kind of would fall towards the baseline or lean back when he went to lay it up, and I feel like that really caused him to be inconsistent on his 2-point attempts because he really wasn't going up strong or anything like that, and I feel like he's getting that cut and going right to the hoop, and eventually he's going to learn that with his athletic ability, he can start dunking those too, and then it's going to be on because then he'll get fouled, I feel like, a lot more too. So I can't wait for that to happen, hopefully, but or run some design cuts where it's meant for him to dunk. But I really like the speed and the presence at which he's playing at right now, and I'm really excited to see what he does this year under Billups.
Yep, agreed. Who else do you want to talk about? As far as like Greg Brown goes, I don't know. Do you want to say anything about him? I don't really have anything to say on him or Watford.
Brown, in a game like this, I wish those guys would play more than Blevins and Ellaby, but Brown, you can see flashes of him being a really solid defender, so I like seeing that. On offense, I feel like he camps at the 3-point line a little too much, so hopefully they teach him that he can cut more. And if he does start cutting more, I feel like that those lob passes are going to be there for him eventually. But there wasn't a lot of transition in this game, so it's hard for him to get going if he's not cutting much and he's not and we're not getting out and running much with that second unit. So hopefully those things change in the future. But yeah, it's kind of hard to tell where he's at when he's not really super involved when he's in the game.
Yeah, and that was pretty much my takeaway too, is it's kind of hard to read in too much into it. Was active on the boards, which was nice to see. Just he wasn't playing against the best players, number one. He wasn't necessarily playing against NBA caliber players, and I don't know. It was sort of... Things were just kind of messy with him in the game, with who else he was sharing the court with. Really, Dennis Smith Jr. was the only guy that made plays without turning over the ball like crazy tonight. So, you look at Trendon Watford have 4 turnovers. He and Greg Brown played some together. Patrick Patterson had 2 turnovers. Quinn Cook had 2 turnovers. So it was just sort of a situation where, and that was kind of my takeaway from the whole game, where a lot of it was just an absolute mess at times, just because of the guys we had on the court, that it was hard to really read too much into a guy like a Greg Brown or a Trendon Watford.
Yeah, actually, Watford didn't play much, but he had that nice defensive play where he went vertical at the rim. I really like to see that. That's a smart, heady play. And then he had the steal and the breakaway dunk. So I was like, okay, if you can not be a liability on defense, that would be huge for him, because you saw a couple times at his size, he can put it on the floor and make something happen. And he had that the one play where Greg Brown actually cut, so Trendon Watford drives to the middle of the key and just dumps it off to a cutting Greg Brown, who uses his athleticism to double pump and get a lay-in. So I really like the activity when they're moving and going. And then he had a nice play where he dribbled in and got a lay-in. So I like his abilities. He has some useful skills. Hopefully they keep showing up in a game, but it's too early to tell anything on him, I think. He's not playing enough, yeah.
And then Larry Nance Jr. made a couple buckets today, was 0 for 2 from 3, but played 24 minutes, was 2 for 5 from the field, had 3 steals, 4 rebounds, and assists. I feel like we'll see the true value of him when he's comfortable in the system and kind of knows his role in the system and knows how to play off of guys. I just like that he makes quick decisions offensively. He reads the game fast on both ends of the floor. He rotates very quickly on the defensive end, and he's not a guy who the ball sticks to. So I've enjoyed that part of his game. He's just not a guy who's going to wow you, especially if he's playing next to lesser players. He's more of a glue guy that holds everything together. When everything else around him is just kind of crap, it's not going to be that good, So he's not a guy that's going to take over a game or anything. He's just, I feel like he has not yet shown his true value. And I feel like that is something that is coming up once games start actually mattering, once he's playing meaningful games, and once he's playing next to better players than who he played next to tonight. Was
he 0 for 2 or all 3 of his misses from 3?
0 for 2 from 3.
I know he missed two in a row in the first quarter. Yeah. There's going to be a time where this team, I feel like, figures it out. But right now, he's just trying to make passes that aren't necessarily there yet, but they could be. Mm-hmm. And I really like that. There was one play where him and Nurk had like a little 2-man game going, and if the pass would have just been a little bit better timed, it would have been like a dunk for Nurk. And I think they had one where it was reverse rolls too, where Nurk passed to him. He might have gotten fouled on that one. There's so much you can do, and I was glad we got to see the Nance Nurk lineup tonight at least. And there was a couple times where it was almost like a Horns play. And for those that don't know, so Horns is where you have your 2 bigs at the elbows by the free throw line. But they ran pick and roll with Nance on one side, and ended up not being there. They tried the dribble handoff. It wasn't there. And he passed to Nurk on the other side, and they ran an action on the other side with Simons and got an open 12-foot jumper or whatever. And Nance was smart enough to know that wasn't going to work and not to force it, and kicked it to the other side, and caught the defense off guard. And there were a couple times where he just swung the ball to the other side real quick. And when you have a big man like Nurk there on the other side, and able to you have a good passing big man on either side of the court that just I feel like there's so much that Billups could do with that eventually. So I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of what those two can do playmaking wise.
Yep, I agree with that. Shout out Dro for a $5 dono. He says if Dennis Smith Jr. did not get hurt, he would have been a problem in the league. He looked confident today. Too bad Blevins got that much time. That's the issue with Harry Giles too. Is if Harry Giles never got hurt in high school and the NBA, then he would have been an absolute monster too. So there's quite a bit. There's quite a lot of players that were very highly ranked in high school, headed into college, that ended up having injury issues and therefore probably didn't become the players that they otherwise would have been able to become if they had stayed healthy. So it always sucks with guys like that. Appreciate the dono from Dro with the $5. The only guy we really have left to talk about today, we could talk about Ellaby if you want.
Real quick, my mom was at the game and she reminded me of something that I wanted to mention as well. And that's Larry Nance Jr. is a communicator out there. Like he's talking and he's very good at letting his teammates know like what's going on around them and stuff. And I feel like Nurk has pretty much been the only one who's been active doing that the last couple of years. So to have another person on the court who will also do that, and I feel like Zeller probably will be like that as well. Haven't noticed it because he didn't play that much the first game and now is hurt for the rest of the regular season. For those that don't know, they mentioned today that he's going to be out for the preseason, but they're hoping to have him by the first game in the regular season.
Who was that? You said Zeller?
Zeller, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just that communication it helps a lot when you're trying to form a good defensive unit and then just make an instinct play. So I think that's a good point by my mom. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks to Eric's mom. So you got Ellaby, Nurkic. That's about it. Take your pick.
Yeah, Ellaby was fine. He didn't really make me mad tonight. He didn't really do much on offense.
5 turnovers, though.
Yeah, a lot of turnovers, of course. Yeah, that was bad. But, yeah, defensively, I think he's fine. I don't think he's terrible on the defensive end. But, yeah, hopefully we're not talking about him playing at all this year.
Yeah, he's just so mad.
Yeah.
Lots of players that are hard to even really talk about tonight outside of Dennis Smith Jr. Nurkic, 18 minutes, 5 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 for 4 from the field, 0 for 1 from 3. 2 turnovers. Was kind of, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Wasn't necessarily the game that you wanted to see out of him. What do you think?
Yeah, you can tell. It's just, once again, playing with Blevins, Ellaby for the most part. Like, what is he supposed to do? And those guys aren't cutting. And then when he finally, Dennis Smith Jr. comes in and all of a sudden they look great, and Nance and Dennis Smith and Simons all look good. But it's just so hard to run an offense or a defense when you have such a big liability out on the floor.
It all comes back to Keljin Blevins, man.
Yeah.
It all circles. Everything goes full circle there. All right, so that's all the players. Any other takeaways you have from this game?
No, my overall takeaway is that what was our final numbers from 3 as a team?
6 for 29.
Yeah, so obviously we're a much better shooting team than that, especially when we have our main guys. So I liked the looks we were getting from 3, though. I felt like all but maybe a handful of those were pretty much wide open kick-out shots and stuff like that. So I really liked the way the offense was flowing. We saw plenty of really nice passes cross court from our guards to an open shooter. Once again, just weren't hitting them tonight, but I liked what I was seeing on offense in terms of our shot selection and the type of offense we were running.
Yeah. It'll be fun to hopefully see that with meaningful players potentially Wednesday. On Wednesday, the Phoenix Suns will host the Portland Trail Blazers. We go on the road. That game has been moved to 2 p.m. Pacific time. It used to be at 7 p.m. Pacific time, but Phoenix has a WNBA Finals game tipping off around that time. So the Suns have been playing their home games on the Mercury Court. So I assume that's going to be the case tonight as well. Or tonight. That's going to be the case on Wednesday as well. So that game will be at 2 p.m. Kind of a weird tip-off time there for a Wednesday. Hopefully, it's a game where you see some starters in action, because I would like to kind of get a feel for, hopefully an improvement with the starting lineup over Game 1. Hopefully we'll be able to see that in Game 3. And especially if Phoenix, the defending Western Conference champions, if they play their meaningful players, then that could be a bit of a good litmus test, or as good of a preseason litmus test as you can find. So I'm hoping Phoenix plays their players, but they've already been playing their players, and that'll be their final preseason game. So it's very likely they could just play scrubs. They could play like a similar lineup to that we did tonight. Yeah. And that would be a little bit of a disappointment if we're playing, Dame, CJ, Rocco, Nas, and guys like that. So we'll see what the lineups look like on Wednesday. I will be, and Eric might be, I don't know. Valley Pod always does live play-by-play streams for their Suns games, so I will be joining them on Wednesday during that game. I will tweet out that link if you want to go and watch that. If you don't follow me on Twitter, I'm at ToreyJonesYT. That's Torey with a Torey, JonesYT. Eric is at HoopsJock. The channel is at Blazers Uprise YT. I'll tweet out that link when I appear on that stream. Other than that, Eric, you got anything else?
Yeah, so I have 2 good questions in chat. The first is from Gabriel Foster. Who do you believe will be in our 9-man rotation?
Dame, CJ, Norm, Rocco, Nurkic, Simons, Nasir Little, Larry Nance Jr., Cody Zeller.
Yep, I agree.
That's the 9-man rotation, and that's pretty much been established at this point. So,
yeah. And
I'd be surprised if it was something else.
The only change I would see to that is if Nas somehow continued to struggle, I could see maybe Dennis Smith Jr. or Tony Snell getting a crack at some rotation minutes. But other than that, yeah, I completely agree with those 9.
Yeah, I don't see Dennis Smith Jr. getting a crack if Nas is struggling.
Well, I mean, they might just
because Nas is at the 3.
They just play a smaller lineup. I think they just have 3 guards all the time, but I don't know.
Yeah, I have a hard time. I have a hard time seeing them go. I mean, with them as already as small as they are, I don't know. I feel like it'd be more likely to be Tony Snell.
Yeah.
If it was Simons that was struggling, or maybe Simons missed some time, then I think you would be seeing some Dennis Smith Jr. It's just I think it'll be hard to slot in Dennis Smith Jr. over Tony Snell if Nas is struggling, simply because we need some, size at that backup 3, I think, compared to just running a 3-guard lineup. So we'll see, though. I mean, it's Portland and guards, man. You never know.
One thing I'm curious about is if our second unit struggles moving the ball, and it's mostly because of CJ, which isn't out of the realm of possibility. If Chauncey will continue to go with that, or if he tries something different with the second unit.
Yeah, that just means Simon's minutes get cut, or CJ's minutes get cut, so yeah, that's the trouble with the solution of playing CJ with Dame more, is there's not as many backup guard minutes for one person, because you're having to play 2 backup guards instead of just one with a staggered Dame and CJ. So,
and this is why both of us have not really cared that we haven't signed a 3rd guard in the past, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So what's the other good question?
Well, before I get to that, so yeah, Aeromancer, our post-game streams are always right after the game, so
they're always post-game.
We can't have a post-game show like 5 hours after the game. That wouldn't make sense. But we do have.
here's the one thing this year. Like last year, we were right after the game for every game, right? Except for Game 6, because I went to that game. This year, if I go to a game, post-game streams might be live like 30 minutes after, right? The goal is to get you, Eric, to be able to run the same graphics as I do.
Yeah.
That would be cool, and that way, wouldn't miss a beat, and you could go live, and I could join in 30 minutes later. But we're doing a lot graphically this year, and I have some help from Krish with that. So at the start of the season, at least, it's likely if I go to a game, it won't be live until about 30 minutes after. But we always go live as soon as we can, as soon as we physically can.
Mm-hmm. And then the other question is, actually, real quick. So we will have our twice weekly shows as well, in addition to post game shows throughout most of the season. With the exception of the first week, we're doing it Wednesday instead of Thursday. But yeah. So we do stream at other times on other days.
Yeah, we have it's on this channel. This is the Mondays, Thursday streams. Usually, we'll release, if you want to stay up to date with stuff, just make sure you follow the channel and us on Twitter. That's the easiest way. Simplest and easiest way. Or if you don't have Twitter, you can always turn on notifications for channels or whatnot. I think that's probably the next best option. What was the second good question? Or
so this is from James Porty Music. Mm-hmm. How long do you guys think it'll realistically take to, quote, figure it out?
I mean, anything, I guess, will just be an estimation. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say. To say.
So, if you look at the Knicks last year, for example, mm-hmm. they were starting at such a low baseline from the year before that just being around 500 was like a step up most of the year, and then they got hot for a stretch for about a month or so late in the season and took over the 4th seed. But you could see the stylistic changes like right away with similar personnel. So it was pretty much right away that you started noticing that players are figuring it out. They just, mm-hmm. I don't know if they have the talent that we do to figure it out. I just feel like we can figure it out faster. And even if we don't figure it out for a while, we're still good enough playing the way. It's not like we're just going to give up 200 points a game because we're trying to figure it out or something. It won't be any worse than last year, worst case scenario. And we can still win games playing that way. So I feel like even if we struggle to figure it out initially, we'll still be able to at least tread water and play decent basketball enough to not like be out of the playoff picture by the time we do figure it out.
Yep. And the Suns started 8-8 last year, so it took them upwards of 20 games to start to figure it out. So 20 to 30 games. I mean, the thing is, the Blazers have a hard initial 20 to 30 games. They have a very hard schedule to start the season off. So even if they're playing well, if you just look at the record or you just look at results, it might seem like they haven't really figured much out, even if they have. Mm-hmm. Go look at my schedule breakdown if you want some more context with that. The first 20 games of the season are very, very brutal. We have 6 back-to-backs in November. We have 16 games in November. November is only 30 days. It's not even a 31-day month. So that's the thing, is you can't just look at the results to see if the team is figuring things out. That is basically... that is something that is going to happen with a lot of people. They're just going to say, oh, we're 12-10. This team is not better under Chauncey. They haven't figured anything out. You're going to hear that narrative if we start the season with a 12-10 record. Here's the thing. Given the quality of opponents we have through our first 22 games, a 12-10 record would not be that bad. It would actually be pretty solid. We have just go look over the schedule or go watch the schedule breakdown on the main channel. It's the video that pops up right when you click on the main channel. You can't just base it off win-loss records. So that is something we won't do. We're going to watch the games and we're going to base all our analysis off of what we see on the court instead of what shows up in the ESPN.com box score. So
yeah, and those that have been with us for a while know this already, but we're gonna break it all down. What we're seeing, like what the coaches are struggling with, what they're doing well, right from game one. So we're not gonna we're not gonna be like, oh, it's okay that we only had like 10 assists this game because they're still learning stuff. No, man, that kind of stuff you should see an improvement in that kind of stuff right away. So just the style.
But it won't be as rage filled though,
right?
Because we'll know that they're trying to improve these things. Whereas last year it was like we're not even trying to run an offense.
I will be raging if we don't look like we're trying to, like we did last year.
Yeah, but that's not gonna happen. We don't got Terry Stotts as our head coach anymore. The one final thing I want us to talk about, I kind of forgot about this. Neil Everett, for most road games, will be hosting the pre-game, post-game, and halftime shows. Mm-hmm. So that is Brooks' usual role,
yes,
right? It's not like the Blazers outsiders role. It's like Brooks' usual role is going to Neil Everett, which is insane.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
It's insanely cool, I think. So on road games, maybe our viewership isn't going to be as good during the first 30 minutes as it normally would be. I don't know. Neil Everett, he's by all accounts a great guy and a great host. Mm-hmm. So getting him to do road games, because Brooke Olsendam is traveling with the team. She'll be doing post-game interviews on the court and whatnot. You know, she's going to be on the road again, just like it was back in the first part of the season in 2019-2020. Since she's not going to be at home in studio, she's going to be on the road with the team. That's why Neil Everett is doing road games. For home games, it'll be Brooke Olsendam. She'll be, courtside reporter and all that, and then she'll go up to the concourse, I assume, and host the post-game show up there just like normal. Mm-hmm. So that's the situation with that. What were your thoughts on Neil Everett?
Well, yeah, obviously as someone who grew up watching SportsCenter and stuff like that, he's been a really good anchor for them. So, yeah, huge get. I was initially kind of worried on what that meant for Brooke if she wasn't going to be doing the hosting anymore, because I feel like she did a really good job with that last year. Mm-hmm. But then I figured it out, and I actually tweeted this, and Brooke quote tweeted it saying I got it right on that. She can't do both because the studio show when they're on the road is in Portland. At the Moda Center, so they don't have the studio show on the road with them. So Neil's going to do those, and what I'm assuming most means is that there's probably going to be some games and some situations where Brooke isn't allowed, or the traveling party's not allowed to be full size. So I'm assuming that maybe Brooke would be able to do that from home, and then also Neil's going to continue to do his SportsCenter job, so maybe sometimes it would conflict with that or something. So
that's what I assumed.
Yeah.
So
yep.
We'll have to wait and see how it works, but that was a pretty cool hire today. Anyway, anything else you have for this post-game show before we sign off here? I said we'd go about an hour. We're about an hour and 20 minutes, so yeah, a little extra. Is there anything else that you got for us, Eric?
I just want to answer David Yu's question. Do you think Chris has done enough to secure the 15th spot? If we use the 15th spot, yes, I think he's adequate enough to use it on there. I could also see us just signing one for the minimum 14 and not signing
He's still up in the air, and the thing is, like, a lot of him earning a spot would come through practices that we can't see. So It's hard for us to answer.
He did look a lot better tonight, more active. I liked his two-man game with Dennis Smith Jr. They were getting a lot of easy buckets with that. And I feel a lot better than I did after the first game with him.
Yeah, until he rolled his ankle just
walking
up the court. That was very weird. Yeah. Anyway, that's going to wrap up the stream. My hair is quitting on me. I'll throw the hat back on. That's going to wrap up the stream. We will post this audio on Spotify. We'll get to that right after the stream is done. So if you missed the first half of this, you can listen to it on Spotify. I think it's also on Google Podcasts. I don't remember, though. So definitely just Spotify if you want to listen to the audio back. And I will have one video out tomorrow and then one out the next day. Maybe two tomorrow. I don't know. I have already recorded the Roko player preview. I just need to finish editing that, and then I'll drop Norman Powell's player preview next. So those are the next two coming up. Went on a little bit of a hiatus, but we're going to finish rolling those out. And we're going to have a post-game show going live around 4:30 on Wednesday after Suns versus Blazers. And then Friday will be the last preseason game. Eric, we've only had 2 preseason games, and I'm already just tired of preseason.
Yeah.
I've never been this tired so fast of preseason. Normally it's like, yay, we get Blazer basketball back. You just kind of relax and watch it. I am so tired of preseason already. I'm ready for real basketball.
Yeah, I feel bad for the teams that have already had like 3 games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So well, at least now we have like consistent games. Now we got a Wednesday game. I'm bummed that game is at 2 p.m., but we'll make it work. And then Friday, who's our last preseason game against? Is it Golden State again?
It's either Golden State or Denver. I think it's Golden State.
It is Golden State.
Yeah.
That one will be on NBA TV, which will be blacked out in the Portland area, so don't get your hopes up. But if you're outside the Portland area, you can watch that on NBA TV. That'll be Friday, October 15th, going live at 7 p.m. Those 2 games are on the road. And then October 20th, home opener, opening to the season. That'll be against the team that we played tonight, the Sacramento Kings. So I'm looking forward to that. With that being said, I'm not going to plug a bunch of stuff. I plug things all the time. I'm not going to make this outro long. Anything you want to say before I hit him with the piece?
Appreciate everyone for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for all the great contributions in chat. And we'll see you guys on Wednesday.
Yep, we will see you then. Until then, have a good rest of your night. Have a good Tuesday. We'll be live right here on Wednesday. As always, peace out. Go Blazers.